Hello viewers, we have brought you to one of the most famous places in ancient history. In front of me, and where I'm standing right now, is the pass of Thermopylae, or as the ancient Greeks knew it, the hot gates, because close by there are sulfur springs from which hot water comes from. In this place, one of the most famous rearguard actions took place ever, a place of epic heroism. Over there, that low hill, you can see that, to over there, where those bushes are, that was been the sea. The sea is much further away now than it used to be, but 2,500 years ago, the sea was much closer. So we're talking about a pass of about maybe 150 meters wide between mountains and sea. This was the place where King Leonidas decided to make his stand against the invading Persian hordes who had come from the north. Now, I want you to cast your eye back to the year 480 BC. Greece was threatened by an enormous Persian invasion, and it's one of the few times in which the Greek cities actually came together to fight a common menace. Now, when I say they came together, some Greek cities decided not to fight because they hoped that the Persians would give them better terms and not destroy their cities. But the two main Greek powers at this time, Athens and Sparta, they decided to come together as allies and fight the common threat, which was the Persians under their emperor Xerxes. Now, the Persians had crossed into Greece near Constantinople and were moving south towards Athens. The Greek strategy was the Athenians would concentrate on the sea, so the Athenian navy would try and stop the Persian ships from sailing southwards. That was the Athenian task. On land, the Spartans would try and stop the Persian advance here at Thermopylae. And you can see why they chose this place, because it's a very narrow isthmus, 150 meters wide. Very difficult to cross those mountains, especially if you've got a big army and you've got a lot of wagons carrying supplies. Pretty impossible, in fact, as anybody who knows Greece will know. So King Leonidas in charge of the land battle, the Athenians out at sea. What happens? King Leonidas has 300 Spartans with him, his royal personal bodyguards. The Spartans had an army of about 10 to 12,000 men. King Xerxes of the Persians, according to ancient sources, had maybe 2 million men. We don't think that's true. We think it's more likely he had about 120,000 to 300,000 men. But still, compared to the whole Spartan army of maybe 15,000, it was a huge horde that was descending on Greece from the north. And the Persians had one objective here: to conquer Greece, to annihilate democracy, to annihilate these pesky independent Greeks who wouldn't do what they were told to do. So King Leonidas wanted to bring the whole Spartan army here, but he couldn't, because in Sparta at this very moment in August 480 BC there was a religious festival, and it meant for 2 weeks the Spartans were not allowed to do anything. So the main Spartan army was still several hundred kilometers away in Sparta. They couldn't move. But King Leonidas, he knew the threat and he knew how important it was to put up a fight. So he decided to go anyway, and he took his personal bodyguard with him, which was the 300 Spartans that we all know. Now, the Greeks here would have totaled about 7,000 men. They were under the command of King Leonidas. He had his 300 Spartans, but there were contingents from other Greek cities as well, who we never hear about, but they were also here. That's 7,000 men who were going to try and stop an army of maybe 250,000. Pretty heroic. Among those 7,000, not all of them would have been soldiers. Some would have been water carriers, others would have been slaves, so there would have been even less fighting men. King Leonidas, he arranges his army here. A few kilometers back down the pass, he positions his rear guard, maybe a few thousand men. So you're looking at maybe 3,000 to 4,000 Greeks defending this narrow pass. What they did was they built a sort of makeshift wall, a barricade, and for 1 week they hold Xerxes' huge army, 250,000 men coming from the north, heading south towards Athens. King Leonidas holds them here for 7 days. 3 of those days he fights. 4 of the other days, they just eyeball each other. They don't do anything. But for 7 days, he holds them up here. And you know, in military terms, time is very precious, and those 7 days are very important. The Persians can't get through because the Spartans and their allies, they hold their position. And the mountains doesn't allow them to outflank them. The sea doesn't allow them to outflank them. This is why King Leonidas chose this spot. But the Persians learn from a Greek man, a local man called Ephialtes, that there is a pass over those mountains which will take the Persian army around the pass here and allow them to arrive at the rear of the Greek position. And Ephialtes, he shows the Persians the way. He's the greatest trader of them all. Do not name your children after him, because he lives in infamy for all time. So the Persians managed to send some of their troops over the mountains, outflanking the pass, and they would have arrived several kilometers back that way. King Leonidas, not stupid, he realizes the Persians are outflanking him. At this point, he has a choice to make, and this is where the heroism of the Battle of Thermopylae comes into fore. King Leonidas, he could have withdrawn all of his men and himself out of the pass and fallen back towards Athens. Yes, sensible thing to do. He doesn't do that because that's not what Spartans do. When they fight, they win or they die. So he decides to send most of his Greek allies back south, away from the danger. They get out of the trap. But he himself and his 300 Spartans, they stand firm here. Now, he wasn't alone. There were 700 Thespians with him, so there were about 1,000 Greeks here. We never hear of the Thespians, but they stood with the Spartans as well. And they equally should share that glory of that. So about 1,000 Greeks decide to fight here, an epic last stand battle. They know they've been cut off to the rear. They know there's 100,000 Persians to the front. They know that they're not going to survive, but they choose to make their stand here because as King Leonidas knows, this is it. This is what he's trained all his life for. And he also knows that if he makes a stand here, if he dies, it doesn't really matter because his name is going to live on forever. And that's why I'm still talking to you today about him. No one else remembers the other people who tried to beat the Greeks here. So this is a very famous place, and anybody who comes to Greece, you've got to visit this place.